Now, the tourism transport sector is being paralysed by government's red tape. That's according to the South African Tourism Services Association. It says many tour operators have been unable to obtain their licenses from the National Public Transport Regulatory Authority and cannot perform services. Now, operating licenses for tourist vehicles need to be issued by the regulator, but SATSA says this is not happening. Let's find out more now from the Southern Africa Tourism Services Association Deputy Chairperson, Oupa Palane, who joins us live now. Oupa, thank you so much for your time. I mean, before we get into the nitty-gritty, we just saw a package there now with ordinary South Africans on the street saying they're looking forward to the last of the COVID-19 regulations to be dropped. We're told that some of those changes might impact on tourism, and I'm sure that will be widely welcomed by your organization that is, of course, still struggling to get back on its feet in what hopefully can be called a post-pandemic South Africa.
Definitely. Ours is always have been that we should be driven by science. And if the scientists are saying to us there is no need for masks, then there's no need for masks. And yeah, I think for us it will be such a huge relief, especially for some of our members who are in eventing businesses and also conferencing businesses, because they're struggling to really recover at this current moment. So it will be very good news to the tourism sector if we do away with these masks. And as some of the listeners are saying, is that if you want to wear your mask, you're welcome to continue to do so. But let us not make it mandatory to everyone. Thank you.
Okay, now back to the point of our conversation, which is about what you call the systematic failures within the National Public Transport Regulator. Now, obviously, COVID brought with it all kinds of issues in itself, and we saw a lot of issues in our government structures or regulators like these. But you're saying that these problems predate the COVID-19 pandemic. Tell us what you believe the problems they are and what kind of impact it's had on your members.
I think it's basically government inefficiency. And I do not want anyone to hear anyone saying that it has to do with the pandemic. We have been at this issue since pre-COVID. It's been over 5 years that we've been trying to say to government, you cannot enact a law which says tour operators must have licenses and you don't issue them those licenses. It's absurd. You know, and there has been a systems failure because we've spoken to quite a number of people, all the ministers that they've been changing, putting in these two departments of tourism and transport, the officials, the DDGs, the officials at MTPR, all these people, we've been consulting with them, indicating the negative impact they have. Imagine a tour operator buying vehicles, expected to pay vehicles and not getting your operating license. When government says it is a requirement that you must get this operating license, and when you want this operating license, you can't get it. The law says it must at least take you about 60 months, which we still don't understand why it must take you days. I mean, 60 days to get a license. And it has been over 2, 3, 4 years for some of our operators not getting their license.
Now, that sounds like it would be completely debilitating to any business, but especially smaller operators, one would believe, because often in the tourism industry, you have these one-man or one-woman bands that are the tourism guide as well as driving the vehicle that they have to take small groups of, especially international tourists around. What are you hearing from the members about that, the day-to-day impact that this has had? Because I'm sure some of them have probably tried to operate without it and on a wing and a prayer, hoping that they don't get stopped, but then they get hassled, I'm sure, when they do get stopped by authorities. What kind of day-to-day impact is it having on your members?
It is suffocating the small guy. It is really suffocating the small guy. They get harassed, they get fined, they get pulled over. Sometimes the tourists are then offloaded off their cars. And this has a serious reputational damage on the operator, because the tourist says, why are you putting me in a car that it does not follow the law? when the guy has been trying for years to follow the law. It's absurd, and I don't understand. It looks like there is someone at government who wakes up in the morning and say, how can I make it so difficult for the tourism sector to operate? It's like they've got an agenda to sabotage the tourism sector. Because honestly, what they are doing is criminal. It's basically economic sabotage to the country. We are struggling with job creation. We've got over 900 vehicles which are standing and they cannot operate, and they are waiting for their licenses. That is 900 people that should be driving those vehicles. Those should be people that are employed in the tourism sector. They should be working to put food on the table of their families. With this economic crisis that we are facing, you have a government that is totally sabotaging the sector.
And every time we hear the president speak about economic stimulation that we need, they keep talking about the great potential that the tourism industry has. But now this regulator falls within the Department of Transport. Have you had any interaction with the Department of Transport to try and get to the source of the issue here?
There is no one we haven't had an interaction with. From all the ministers, the DGs, the officials. We've even tried to knock in the president's office. When the president announced that they are creating a red tape committee to deal with this red tape, we've made presentation through TBCSA, and nothing is happening at the moment. And as I'm saying, you now have a domestic tourism market that is emerging. Most of the black domestic market does not have vehicles. So they depend on tour operators to take them around. So you are saying that people must travel the country, but you are making it difficult for them to travel the country as government. And I just don't understand. Tour operators are struggling, and almost many of them are now facing closure because they are always being harassed and they cannot operate legally. So this is unacceptable for any correct thinking government. It is totally unacceptable, and it's clearly you can see that this is a systems failure. And we need the president, we are calling on the president to really intervene in this matter.
Just finally, before I let you go, it sounds like we're almost talking about a dereliction of duty here, because if we had a public transport system that tourists could depend on, this might not have been so big an issue. But we don't have a public transport system that visitors, whether domestic tourists or international tourists, that can depend on. So they depend even more so on the transport services that the tourism bodies and organizations and small businesses can provide them. So you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, aren't you?
We are. We definitely are stuck between a rock and a hard place. And it is unfortunate that these challenges are caused by a government that always talks about job creation. You know, we are not looking for grants. We're not saying, government, give us money, we want to get into the tourism sector. We have our vehicles. They are parked there. Over 1,000 vehicles are parked there, waiting to get on the roads and operate. But you have a government that is refusing to issue those licenses. And we don't know why. It is simple inefficiencies of government, and they are continuing unabated. And this is not right for our economy. Okay. Honestly, it's totally an economic sabotage.
We're going to leave it there. A very powerful note there from Oupa Palane, the Southern Africa Tourism Services Association Deputy Chairperson.